The oldest book in the library collection of the Leo Baeck Institute, New York, is a rare incunable from 1484, a legal code for the city of Nuremberg. The last pages contain regulation for administering a Jewry Oath. Since the medieval era, Jews had to take a special oath in certain court situations in many territories of the Holy Roman Empire. This was probably the first Jewry Oath ever to be printed. It became the dominant model for oath formulas for several centuries. 14 years after the publication of the Jewry Oath, Jews were expelled from the city. By 1499, the Jewish community had left Nuremberg. The Free City of Nuremberg was an important trading and cultural hub. It was ruled by a group of patrician families, became the center of the German Renaissance and Humanism, home to Albrecht Dürer, printing presses, and actually the first paper mill north of the Alps. It's here in the bottom right corner. Guilds had been abolished in the 14th century. Settlements of Jews in Nuremberg were recorded as early as 1146. Jews were under the protection of the Holy Roman Emperor. Flourishing phases alternated with phases of traumatic persecutions and expulsions. In the 13th century, the Jewish population constituted about 1,500 persons at its peak. At the end of the 14th century, the Nuremberg Jewish community had dropped to a few hundred. Since the 1470s, the Municipal Council of Nuremberg had secretly petitioned the emperor to get rid of its Jews. In 1498, the emperor approved the expulsion of the Jews from Nuremberg because he was in need of funds. It was part of the deal that the expulsion was not linked to the city. The expulsion decree thus states, "We, Maximilian, on our own initiative and with sufficient good reasons, we do hereby proclaim to the honorable, loving, and loyal mayors and councillors of the city of Nuremberg that they shall expel all Jews and Jewesses from the said city." The entire Jewish community had to leave by February 1499. Jews were only allowed to live in Nuremberg again in the 19th century. Back to 1484. The work that contained the Jewry Oath was an important innovative law collection in German. It was the result of a decade-long revision of the legal code for the city of Nuremberg. It attempted to strike a balance between customary, canon, and Roman law, hence the title Die Reformation der Stadt Nürnberg. After some manuscript versions, the work was printed, a brand new technology, and soon copied by many other cities. As many incunabula, this work does not have a title page yet, but starts with a woodcut. Left a version without coloring, and on the right side a colored version. The coat of arms and the two saints symbolize two political powers, the Free City of Nuremberg and the Holy Roman Emperor, both rooted in Christianity. Right after the title woodcut, there is an excessive table of contents, 50 pages long, see a page on the left, subdivided into chapters and subchapters. On the right, a page with two brief laws. There is no page numbering yet, initials are hand-colored, here in blue and red. The 1484 legal code was clearly meant to be a practical tool, in the vernacular German, not in Latin, with a sophisticated system for finding laws which are very succinct. Some more eye candy. After the table of contents, the quasi-colophon can be found, followed by a two-page introduction before the actual laws start. Now let's look at the Jewry Oath. The Jewry Oath is located at the end of the volume on the last 4 pages, the only chapter which is not numbered. It is not listed in the detailed table of contents. The Nuremberg Jewry Oath was strongly influenced by the 12th century Erfurt Jewry Oath. A single square volume leaf at the Stadtarchiv Erfurt, the Municipal Archive Erfurt, contains a carefully written German Jewry Oath text with a seal attached to it. The central function of oaths consisted in providing judicial evidence. It was a privilege to be able to perform an oath. Taking an oath could, for example, mean exemption from undergoing a trial by ordeal. A Jewry oath had to fulfill two conditions. First, it needed to be modeled after Jewish law to ensure that the Jewry oath taker considered the oath legally binding. Secondly, a Jewry oath had to neutralize the fear of Christians that the oaths of non-Christians were not valid. The assurance of the sincere intention of the oath taker was key. Here's the text of the Erfurt Jewry Oath in Middle High German with an English translation. However, I want to give you a sense of the structure, not the details. The oath formula starts with the reason for the oath, the innocence of the accused. Then God is called upon, and then horrific threats follow in case of perjury, unnatural death, leprosy, in short, the entire wrath of God's commandments. So, straightforward. The composer is revealed, Archbishop Konrad von Mainz for the city of Erfurt. Taking an oath is a speech act, which was usually incorporated into a ceremonial ritual, a role play. It involved a sacred object and was often performed in a public space. Taking an oath had some similarities for inner Christian and inner Jewish oath situations. Both had to swear on an object. On a staff in old tribal times, the so-called Eidstaber-Zeremonie, Christians on the New Testament or relic, Jews on the Torah. The striking Erfurt vellum leaf was probably used in oath ceremonies itself. The attached seal faces the text upside down. Both parties might have held it facing each other. The Jewry Oath in the Schwabenspiegel, which is a 13th century southern German law collection, here in the 15th century version, was also influential for the Nuremberg Oath. The structure is similar to the Erfurt Oath. God, the Creator, is called upon, followed by a long list of threats and curses in the event of perjury. What is different is first a ritual element. The oath taker had to stand on a pigskin, and second, the object is defined. The oath taker had to place his wrist onto a Hebrew Bible. The Jewry Oath was by design an often dramatic, public, and sacred ritual that called out for divine judgment. The medieval court has also been dubbed a theater of terror. Medieval rituals were not necessarily absurd or humiliating at the time, but were considered to be a precaution against the possible interference of demonic powers. A word to the humiliating pigskin ritual. Historians today agree that degrading rituals such as the pigskin ceremony did take place, but were not as widespread and common as later generations perceived them to be. Of 77 medieval German towns and villages that had a Jewry Oath in place, only 8 used the pigskin ceremony. Both the 12th century Erfurt Jewry Oath and the 13th century Schwabenspiegel Oath were important sources for the Nuremberg Jewry Oath. What was different? The Nuremberg Oath spelled out several auxiliary oaths or Nebeneide to make sure that the process was valid. And first, it was checked if the Hebrew Bible was a valid copy. Second, does the oath taker believe that Christians believe in the true God? Third, is the Jewish oath taker aware of that perjury is blasphemy? And fourth, will he speak the truth? Only after that the main oath ceremony could take place. The Jewry Oath taker had to place his right hand up to his wrist into the Hebrew Bible, a ritual which corresponds to the Schwabenspiegel version, explicitly on verse Exodus 27, the fourth of the Ten Commandments, and it's, "You shall not swear falsely by the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not clear one who swears falsely by his name." So far, so good. But how to find that verse in a Hebrew Bible if one does not know Hebrew? The City Council of Nuremberg came up with a smart solution. In the chapter on the Jewry Oath, the fourth commandment is provided in the form of a Hebrew word-by-word transcription with German translation. This was presented in a complex textual layout. Only then we finally reach the actual oath formula with the well-known elements. God the Creator is called upon, the four threads of the Erfurt Oath are spelled out, as well as some of the threads of the Schwabenspiegel Jewry Oath were added and continued here. So how did the Municipal Council of Nuremberg develop the Jewry Oath and especially the Hebrew transcription? A manuscript codex at the Staatsarchiv Nuremberg contains a collection of sources pertaining to Jews in Nuremberg, including a collection of German Jewry Oath formulas and research notes. What is depicted here is considered to be the original draft of the Jewry Oath from 1484. The so-called Ratschlag Buch 13 makes later references to the pigskin ceremony from the Schwabenspiegel. It reflects consciously how humiliating and disgusting this ceremony would have been for Jews, and hence not valid. And therefore the pigskin ceremony was not used in Nuremberg. Here is again the fourth commandment in the printed 1484 version and the manuscript version. A side note. Some of the Hebrew transcription reveal how Jews in Ashkenaz would have pronounced Hebrew. The manuscript also recommends recruiting a group of 3 or 4 learned Jews and asking one after the other to find Exodus 27 in the Hebrew Bible, to read it in Hebrew and to translate it into German, while the Christian administrator memorizes the page and compares the text based on the transcript. Overall, the city of Nuremberg went to great lengths to make sure that the Jewry Oath was valid for both Jews and Christians. However, Jews were expelled within 14 years in 1498 and had to leave by 1499. So here's that. It is therefore even more striking that the 1503 edition of the Nuremberg Legal Code, so the second edition, 4 years after the expulsion of Jews from the city, still explicitly included the Jewry Oath. Did the printer just forget to remove the chapter, or was the Jewry Oath still in use? A strong clue that the Jewry Oath was kept deliberately in the 1503 edition is the fact that it was given 2 alphabetical index entries. One entry was here under Oath, Eide, shown here. This detailed index was added to the 1503 edition, so also an innovation. And the entire volume received page numbering. However, the Jewry Oath was not integrated into the chapter arrangement. So overall, there was still a need for the Jewry Oath in Nuremberg. Business and other interaction between Christian and Jews in Nuremberg continued after the expulsion, however, outside the city, which is also confirmed in other sources. The 1522 Nuremberg reprint and subsequent editions no longer contain the Jewry Oath. The 1484 Nuremberg Jewry Oath is first and foremost a cutting-edge, innovative tool in line with the overall ambitious revision of the Municipal Legal Code of Nuremberg. The Jewry Oath aimed at integrating a minority group into the legal and economic framework of a dominantly Christian society. It combined Christian and Jewish elements so that both groups felt at ease about the validity of transactions. On the other hand, the 1484 Nuremberg Jewry Oath is also a symbol of cynical realpolitik. The Nuremberg Municipal Council had secret plans to get rid of its Jews, after the Jewish community had lost its economic power and usefulness. When the chance arose of buying out the Jewish community from Emperor Maximilian I, the municipal council moved quickly. The emperor even took the blame for the expulsion entirely on himself, and the city remained publicly innocent and did not even incur expenses, since it was able to sell the Jewish properties it took over to interested Christian citizens. This ambiguous relationship between the Jewry Oath as an innovative legal tool, which helped to integrate the Jewish minority, and then the city's plans to get rid of its Jews. It's also mirrored in the way the 1484 Jewry Oath was incorporated into Nuremberg's brand new legal code. It is important and symbolic that the Jewry Oath became part of the overall legal code, but it was only an added unnumbered chapter at the end of the book, which could be easily separated and removed. Ultimately, this, probably envisioned, separation did take place. The Jewry Oath disappeared over time from the legal code of the city of Nuremberg, and the Jews were expelled in 1499. However, the reality of the matter was not as black and white. The fact that the first reprint of the Nuremberg Legal Code in 1503, 4 years after the expulsion, still explicitly featured the Jewry Oath, is a clear indication that business relationship between Jews and Christians continued, regardless, albeit outside the city. In addition, the innovative 1484 Jewry Oath formula was incorporated into the so-called imperial Reichskammergerichtsordnung, that's a mouthful, around 1538, and found a dedicated space there. And this was valid until the 19th century. Overall, the history of the 1484 Nuremberg Jewry Oath is an important and ambivalent milestone in the history of Jewish-Christian relations. And with this, I conclude. This was actually the short version. A comprehensive version of this study was published in the LBI yearbook in 2020. You can find it there, or you can email me for a PDF. Thank you.